Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz test postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 301. I was black and my opponent played f4, the bird opening. So if we look at the bird, it's like the sixth choice, or bird's opening. After the big four, e4, d4, c4, knight f3, g3, Binko's opening, and f4, bird's opening. Now, I guess b3 here is Nimzo Larsen opening. So these are pretty obscure. Against f4 in the past, I have played this move e5, which is known as the Fromm Gambit. Pretty interesting and tactical way to play. So if you're interested in that, search the channel for Fromm Gambit, and you'll find some games I've played there. In this game, I chose to play d5, the more solid choice and the most popular choice there. And now my opponent went d3. I guess knight f3 is the more common way to approach this, or e3. Setting up kind of a Leningrad Dutch with the bishop here and castling queenside. A Leningrad Dutch with the colors reversed. But my opponent plays d3. It looks like preparing e4. And so the move knight f6 is very logical. I probably should have just played that automatically. I played instead knight c6, which, although it's not a bad move, I regretted later having this knight on c6. You'll see it kind of gets in the way. I want to play my c-pawn forward, so becomes a problem. But for now, I still have that slight edge given to me by my opponent by playing this unusual opening. And the game continues. Knight f3, e6. This was a point. I was thinking a bit about bishop g4, but I'll show you the line I was afraid of. If he plays here right away, it turns out I can just take the knight, and that's good for me. But I was worried about this line. If I go here, and he plays here, and I go here, the bishop is trapped. So that pawn on f4 is actually setting kind of a trap in a way, because it can come to f5 before the bishop has a time, before black has time to make a square for the bishop to retreat to. So you got to be wary of these flank pawn moves. F4 and c4 the same thing can happen on the other side of the board with the bishop on the bishop coming to the pawn to c4, and the bishop coming to the square b4. Yeah, it can get kicked and then trapped back here. So anyway, something to be on the lookout for in your game. So I kept my bishop back and played e6, so not bad to still get some slight edge. My opponent didn't go all the way with e4. He stuck with e3. So I developed my knight now and clamp down any future e4 ideas. Plays bishop e2. So he is getting ready to castle, set up this kind of Leningrad Dutch structure. I go bishop d6, castle, castle, and bishop to d2. Oh, he goes bishop d2, it's his turn. And now, right here, I was worried about developing my light-squared bishop, and it's interesting that the engine points out e5 is a good move to open up this diagonal for the bishop. It's a hard move to think of because I've earlier just played e8 to e7, so it seems like a waste of a move to, or rather e7 to e6. And so it seems like a waste of a move somehow that I played first to here and then to here. But it's the best move here, just pushing on to e5. So instead, not really thinking about that, I open up this diagonal for the bishop to develop too. Not maybe the best diagonal. It doesn't necessarily have some prospects here, although it turns out to be important later in the game. So my opponent goes with b6, cancel that. My opponent goes with bishop to e1. Okay, bringing his bishop around, and I put my bishop to b7. Now he goes bishop h4, setting up this awkward pin on my knight. And it's interesting, the recommended move here is knight e7, which would allow bishop takes knight and pawn takes, doubling my pawns around the king and creating this open file. But the open file is a double-edged thing. It's also an open file for my rook, and so maybe I can take advantage of that first. So anyway, I was afraid of playing knight e7 because of this issue with the doubled pawns, but it happens later in the game anyway, so I should have probably just dealt with it at that point. Because I need to move this knight, as I mentioned earlier. It's in the way of my c-pawn expansion. So anyway, my opponent just continues developing, and I decide to reroute the knight this way. Knight here to here. to support my knight. And then maybe free up my queen so I can gradually work my way free. So my opponent played h3, cancel that, h3. Maybe intending to expand with g4. I go knight bd7, and then he goes d4, blocking up the center. I go rook a c8. Now I've gotten my knight out of the way, I can think about pushing the c-pawn. And he goes knight e5. And yeah, this is still awkward for me. I can't take the knight because the pawn will take back and he'll win my trapped knight. Maybe I should have just played queen back to e8. Yeah, okay, that is one of the moves there. Although the best move here is a6, which is interesting. But what a6 does is it controls the b5 square, which you'll see after I play the move c5. He can just park a bishop on b5, and this is very difficult. Yeah, he didn't play this, but this is very difficult for me to defend. Okay, this knight is attacked, and I can't easily defend it. The bishop can't defend it. I could defend it with the rook, but that would cost me the exchange, basically, because when he takes, I can't take back with the knight. I would have to take back with the queen in this case, and he would take it, or if I defend with the rook, I would lose the exchange. And if I try to move the knight out of the way, what happens here? Just knight g4. Okay, so white can increase the pressure on my pinned knight here on f3. So all this is good for white here, starting with bishop b5. So taking advantage of this square here and putting extra pressure on my awkward knights. But he played something a little simpler. He just took the knight immediately. I have to take back, and then he grabbed my other knight. And we get into the situation where my pawns get doubled anyway, even though I was trying to avoid it. But the other interesting thing about it is the chess engine rates this as good for black. So the doubled pawns are not the end of the story. I mean, I do have the bishop pair. It's all a question of whether I can get this organized. I mean, the position is kind of clogged up with pawns, and my bishops aren't necessarily well coordinated at the moment. He's got some moves to get an attack going. He could play g4 immediately. He could play knight b5 coming in on this side. Anyway, he chose queen e1, trying to get more pieces over here. And I move my king to h8, hoping to get a rook on the g file and get some counterplay. And play develops kind of logically here. He comes out and attacks my pawn, and I defend it. And he brings his bishop to h5, hitting the f7 pawn. And now I could just play f5 here and chase his queen away. But I was still intent on getting my rook to the g file, so I was trying to figure out a way to do that. First I play c takes d4, and then I play queen e8, defending the pawn on f7, so rook g8 is possible here. And it's still, this line keeps some edge for black, so I'm still doing fine here. Rook a c8 was played, rook a c1 rather, defending the c pawn, so his knight is free to move without losing that pawn. I go rook to g8 as I wanted to, and he goes queen back to f2. Now, perhaps with ideas of pushing the f-pawn. So I decided to stop that with f5. And then he plays knight to e2. So getting his knight, he's going to bring his knight over to the king side and try and join in the attack. But I maneuver my pieces too. I can gradually unpin this f-pawn and get my queen over to g7 and set up a battery on the g2 pawn there. He goes c3, right, so he's freeing up his rook so it doesn't have to defend the c-pawn. I go queen g7, hitting here, and he goes bishop f3, defending on g2, which was not immediately threatened, but that liberates his queen to move too. And now I go bishop a6, setting up a pin on his knight there, which is probably a good idea. He tries to get his king to a safer square, and now, yeah, the engine likes taking there, queen g6. Anyway, here's where I make my mistake. My plan was to play f6 and e5. And let's see, if I put that on the board, after f6, does he have a great move here? Well, it's not like this is so great for me. Say he plays g3, and then I play e5. Yeah, okay, so that sort of is fine for white. It's about equal. But it would lead to some interesting play and some open lines for my bishop, so I might still play like that. Let's see, the engine thinks the most accurate way to play is with queen h6 or bishop to c4. Well, bishop c4 makes sense. That's a good square for the bishop. Queen to h6. Yeah, putting pressure on the f-pawn. Oh, well, opening up the file for the rooks. Maybe the idea is to double rooks on the g file, too. Okay, but I played e5 immediately. Just kind of a mental slip. I really meant to play f6 and then e5. So this just gives away a pawn. And let's see, still bishop c4 is good, but I decided to try and continue with my idea of undermining the center with f6. And now he could just take on f6. He throws in bishop takes d5, and I should probably take on e5 before he takes on e6. But I tried to chase his bishop first, but now he can grab another pawn, and I have to respond to that. I took with the bishop, that's right. And then he needs to do something about his bishop. The engine is recommending c4. He could also drop the bishop, or move the bishop to c6. e6, that's an interesting move. But he played queen f3, defending the bishop, but the queen is now overloaded. It's defending two pieces, and I take advantage of this overloading by taking on e2. But there was an even stronger move that the chess engine points out here, which is rook takes d5, which if you want to think about it for a second, you might want to ask yourself, why is that such a good move? Okay, I will show you the answer now. I'm taking, and if he takes back, which is not the best move, I can play bishop here. So it's not about winning two pieces for the rook, it's about this threat of checkmate on g2. And the queen also is supporting the bishop there. And there's no way out for white's queen. Anywhere it moves, it either stays on this diagonal or it moves away and gets checkmated. So I might as well take. And then I just have a queen against a rook, and he's got a couple pawns. So pretty good position for black. Anyway, I saw another tactic. I played bishop takes e2, and he takes back with the queen, and then I can grab the bishop on d5. So that's just an example of overloading. I picked up a piece, but he does have two pawns for the piece, and it's still a bit tricky. So the game continues, queen f3, hitting my rook, and I defend it. And then rook c to d1, b5. I come up with this idea of trying to undermine this phalanx of pawns here, maybe create some weaknesses where my extra piece can be used to scoop up the pawns. And in the meantime, I also have to keep this f-pawn protected. So he plays a3 to slow down my advance. I play a5. And now he comes up with a good idea, which is to put his rooks on the e-file and try and penetrate here. He gets some nice counterplay with this idea. I push on with b4, and we get an exchange. And then he plays rook e6. So getting ready to double on the e-file and putting some pressure on my bishop. I take again, and then play queen c7 check. I had noticed this check earlier, and I was trying to reserve it for a moment when it would actually do something good, but I couldn't ever find a way to do that. But it allows me to move my queen with tempo, and after the king moves, then I can maneuver my bishop here. Although this is maybe not the best square for the bishop. This turned out to be a bit awkward, but I was just trying to get my pieces to a bit more active squares. So he doubles on the e-file, and now I do have to worry about him coming down to e8, and with the bishop with the bishop defending. After an exchange, the bishop has to defend, and I'll lose the bishop, so that could be a problem. Rook a5, it suggests. I don't know how that works. Rook a5. I did not think of this. He plays rook e8 check. Oh, I can defend this way. This is kind of a clever defense. The rook is defending the bishop through the opponent's rook. Sort of an X-ray defense. Okay, so I didn't realize there was that defense. And so I was trying to defend against rook e8 with the move queen to d7. And now, yeah, this move allows white allows white to equalize. So with accurate play, he could play rook e7 and start chasing me around. He went queen h5 here, and I went rook f8, getting my rook on this side, so don't have that problem. Goes rook e7, hitting my queen. Cancel that. What did he play? Rook e7. Oh, it's my turn. I went rook. No, it's his turn. He went rook e8. Ah, okay. And I went king g8, defending these pieces here. But this was a mistake. He could now play rook 1 to e7 and chase my queen away. Thought I could hold on to everything here, but if I just retreat the queen, then there's a mate in 2 with the rook takes f8 check. And queen takes h7. Ah, yeah, the bishop was needed there to defend h7. So so that would have been winning. So I actually gave the game away here with this move. What was the losing move here? King g8, trying to shore up my defenses over here. I would fall victim to this rook e7 idea. So I need to play something active with my rook. Rook a5, rook b5. I guess this sets up back rank threats against my opponent's king and keeps his pieces in check. Although it is interesting, after rook a5, what if he tries this rook e7 idea here? What can I do? I can throw on the check. And check. Yeah, so it's just the counterplay that keeps his rook in check, and that's the only way to defend here. So this king g8 is no defense. Fortunately for me, he moved the other rook. Instead of the 1 rook to e7, he moved the 8 rook to e7, and now I can defend this. I play queen to c6. Oops. Once again, he could mate me here with rook takes g7. King takes. And rook to e7 check. King to f6. I guess if, oh yeah, once again, he's got the mate threat here. So he's chasing my king around, and eventually he will win material here. Queen h4 check. King g6. Rook or queen takes h7, leads to a mate. Okay, so pretty dangerous situation here. He went rook to e6, hitting my queen, and I took on c3. So he still has this mating idea here. So this was sitting around for a while. So this is one of those positions where I guess you have to look at your cluster of pieces and really think about the position until you figure out the mating idea. But it appears to involve the sacrifice on g7 as a way of clearing the 7th rank there, and then maybe queen taking on h7 with the help of the rook. Those appear to be the winning ideas here. Anyway, he played queen to g5. A logical move, putting pressure on the bishop. But I had seen this, and queen takes g5 here defends the bishop. And now, finally, I think I'm winning. Rook e8. Queen d1 check. King goes to h2. And queen to d2. Attacking his queen. Played rook takes f8 check. I have to take with the king. And then queen e7 check, chasing my king back. I was a little worried here, but at this point, actually, there is no mating attack anymore. It's already gone somehow. With what happened was I finally got my pieces active, and I was able to set up enough counterplay to defend. It's a pretty instructive lesson in how to defend using counterplay. Okay, so queen e8 check was played, but I can just defend with the bishop. And rook e3 was played. These are all good moves. It's just that there's no longer a win here. And looks like my move was not the best. Rook d6 would be the best move, so I could defend with the rook. I saw this defense covering the g3 square, so the rook check here is not going to defeat me. He plays queen e6 check, and I go king g7. And everything's defended. I guess if he plays rook b3, there's a perpetual of some kind. He played queen g4 check. King goes back to h8, and now he's just run out of checks. He picks up a pawn, but at this point, yeah, that picking up the pawn was not a good idea, because I noticed the bishop skewer this time. It's funny, there was previously a bishop skewer on this light squared diagonal, and now there's one on the dark squared diagonal with the other bishop. And there's no way out of this. He played queen e5 check, but I can just take that. And after a couple more exchanges, he resigned. So pretty interesting game there. Shows how difficult it can be to defend, but you need to play actively sometimes, just as passive defensive moves trying to hold on to your pieces don't work. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.